All right, everyone. It is 4:30 p.m. Eastern, so I'm going to get started with pitching yourself to startups. And before we do get started, if you haven't had a chance to think about what you want to get out of this webinar, feel free to do that right now. I want to make sure that this is as effective as possible for each of you. So first things first, I want to introduce who I am. So my name is Winston Law. I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington, and for college, I made my way out to Vermont, where I went to Middlebury, which is a small liberal arts college where I studied geography and French. And at Middlebury, I was really involved in social entrepreneurship, social innovation, wanting to use my education to make some sort of impact. And when I was a rising senior, I thought a lot about what I wanted to do in the future. A lot of my friends are doing consulting job interviews, and I had just did an internship with a social impact consulting firm in New York City. So I thought I'll just move to New York, do some consulting work, it'll be great. And then when I got into the process, I realized that consulting and sort of doing high level strategy things wasn't really what I loved doing and gave me energy. So thankfully, my alma mater has a lot of VFA fellows, and ultimately I got on the phone, learned more about Venture for America, and decided to apply because I wanted to work at startups and find opportunities to see the impact of my work every day, and also build the skills that I think I wanted and needed in order to become a founder of my own one day. So through VFA, I went through a job search process that's internal in Venture for America, and ended up getting a job here in Detroit, Michigan, where I still live, at a real estate tech company. I worked there for about a year and a half, and then in that process, also hired people, hired fellows as well. So can definitely talk about what it's like to be on the other end of looking for a startup job. And then actually last year, when my fellowship ended, I joined VFA full-time as a recruiter. So there's going to be a lot of time for question and answers at the end of this. So feel free to let me know if you have any questions about the VFA experience, VFA in general, or our application process. So for the agenda today, we're going to talk about what is VFA. We're going to talk about how to scope startup jobs, how to actually pitch yourself for startup opportunities, how to nail an interview once you actually get your foot in the door for a conversation, and then we'll end with some Q&A. The first thing is, what is Venture for America? And as a nonprofit, our mission is to create economic opportunities in American cities by mobilizing the next generation of entrepreneurs, that being you potentially, by equipping you with the skills and resources that you would need to create jobs. So we were started back in 2011 with the idea that, number one, entrepreneurship in the United States was on the decline. So we wanted to jumpstart and rejuvenate entrepreneurship in this country by giving young people, the opportunities to learn hands-on. And the best way to learn how to do startups and be an entrepreneur is by doing it. You can only learn so much in the classroom. It's really a hands-on thing. And the second thing is that we saw that there were so many young people who were going to cities like New York or San Francisco, even my hometown of Seattle, and we thought that it'd be a great way to channel young talent to startups to help build companies, and therefore, in hopes of that, contribute to local economies by bringing young talent and connecting them with startups, small businesses that are in our 14 cities. So the cities that we're working in, like I said, aren't in New York or San Francisco. Instead, they're in the Northeast, Midwest, and Southeast. So I'm not going to read all of them out there, but I did my fellowship and still live in Detroit. Really excited about that. There are also a lot of fellows all over the country who are doing very similar things. All of us have different experiences, but are all sort of contributing to our companies at the very least, but also the broader startup ecosystems and communities as well. So in terms of what we do to help fellows actually get to Detroit or Cleveland or New Orleans, is we help our fellows get jobs through a process that happens every spring just for incoming class of fellows, called the match process. And the match process is the process by which fellows connect with, interview with, get offers with, and accept jobs with our company partners across the country. So in order to help our fellows get jobs, we, in the winter and early spring, help them get ready. We are reviewing resumes. We are helping fellows understand what the different startup jobs are, so that in March, when our private online job portal opens for our incoming fellows and our company partners across the country, our fellows are really ready to pitch companies. And pitching here is what we mean by applying. So that's the VFA lingo for you. But the opportunity that we give fellows is to see all the opportunities that are out there that we've sourced and allow them to apply to them on their own. And we provide a lot of resources that I'll talk about in a bit as well. So between May to June, sometimes July and August as well, most fellows are interviewing the companies that have a mutual interest in them, that they think the fellow could really add value to the company. Not every company will respond to a fellow for an interview, but the hope is that you have as many interviews as possible as you're exploring different roles. Our fellows then will almost always go on site to a city, say Kansas City, to visit the city, visit with the company, and get a better sense of what it would be like to work there, as the company also is making a final sort of interview in order to see if the fellow would be a good fit for that company as well. And finally, if a fellow does get an offer, they accept it, we help them negotiate and prepare them to negotiate that offer so that they have potentially a higher salary, potentially other benefits as well. And then that ends that part of the beginning part of the fellowship, and they go to training camp in Detroit, which is a month-long experience where they're getting hard and soft skills that will enable them to really add even more value to the startup job that they just accepted. So this past year during the match process, we had 350 company partners participate. We also started the match season in April with about 280 opportunities posted. To date, we had over 580 opportunities posted on the match portal. And to put that in perspective, we had about 200 fellows this year. So there are always more opportunities with startups for fellows to potentially apply to, which makes it really exciting. And the idea is to help our fellows as much as possible find a really great fit for themselves, and the same with our company partners in our 14 cities as well. The companies that we onboard onto the match process are wide-ranging, anywhere from really early-stage companies where the fellow would be the first hire to later-stage companies where they've raised a Series A, potentially a Series B of funding across a lot of different industries in our 14 cities. The top roles that fellows get, among many others, like design and software engineering, marketing, content creation, are actually in 3 areas. So operations and product management, account management or customer success, and sales and business development. So you definitely don't need to be a coder or an engineer or designer to work at a startup. Startups need people who are going to sell and maintain customers and build processes as much as they need people who are going to build products. And the top industries represented are software engineering or software service companies, education technology, and healthcare. The vast majority of the companies that are in the match process are going to be for-profit companies. There's smaller numbers of venture capital firms, incubators, social enterprises, and nonprofits, but most of the companies that are available are going to be for-profit companies. If you have questions, feel free to hold them until the end. I can't really see questions in the chat right now, but if you have any, feel free to just put them in the chat and I will respond to them at the end. So some of the resources that I mentioned are that private online job portal. So it's something that just fellows can use. It's a really great way that we put on all the companies that we've sourced and all the opportunities that we found for fellows onto, allowing fellows greater agency. We don't tell fellows where to go. We don't place you in a job. We don't tell you what region or city you're going to. It really is based on what a fellow wants to do and is driven by the fellow. We are always encouraging fellows to be open-minded, of course, because there are so many great opportunities in cities and industries that a fellow might not think about off the bat. So open-mindedness and flexibility is always important, although a fellow does have agency. Second thing that we do is provide resume reviews. We look over their bios, pitches, and provide interview coaching just so that fellows are geared for success as much as possible in the startup process. We also have VFA-only job fairs. So in the spring, we'll host job fairs in 3 to 4 of our cities across our different regions. And it's only for fellows, and it's a great opportunity for them to understand what it's like to maybe live in Baltimore or Birmingham, Alabama, but also to meet other fellows in their class and in those cities and jumpstart the interview process by talking to our company partners from that region. And the last thing is that we're also able to make direct introductions to companies. So if you're someone who has a lot of marketing experience at a food company, and we have a food company maybe in Philadelphia that needs someone who does marketing and content creation, then we can make that introduction because there's a really strong fit there. So we do all these things to support and simplify our fellows through a pretty time-intensive job search process, all with the goal of helping our fellows find the right fit. So all that is to say, we know startups. To date, we've helped more than 1,000 recent college grads get startup jobs, and we're really excited to share sort of a snippet of what we've learned to date with you today. Usually it takes quite a few months to prepare startups for the startup job search fully, but think of today as sort of the foundations and really good tidbits to get started on your startup job search. So if you want to learn more, a lot of what I'm sharing with you today is mirrored from our Everything Startups ebook, which launched a few weeks ago. If you have an iPhone, feel free to take out your phone and open your Camera app and click on that link. You'll be asked to put in your name and your email address, and you'll be sent to this ebook. It's pretty long, but I think it's going to have a lot of great resources if you want to dive a little bit deeper. If you don't have your iPhone right now, or if you have an Android device or a computer, feel free to search Everything Startups, VFA, and you should, if our SEO worked, it should be the top hit. So feel free to dive in more. I'm always here to be a resource as well if you have any further questions. So let's dive in now to how to scope startup jobs. So before you even pitch yourself to companies or even do interviews, it's really important to source and find out what opportunities are out there. So the first thing that we recommend is to really have a mindset of open-mindedness and flexibility, because you don't ever know what a company is truly like and what the team's like and what problems they're dealing with, what roles they have available until you've talked to them. I've talked to so many fellows in this past year who went to a job fair in Birmingham, and their exact words were, I didn't realize that a company that I wasn't considering would actually be a really good fit for me. So I would say go into the startup job search with an open mind, because the website can only tell you so much. So what I recommend is to cast a really wide net. Talk to up to 30 or more companies that are really interesting to you. And by interesting, I mean, number one, thinking about the team. Is the founder someone who has a track record of success, someone that has founded other companies before, who maybe has gone through an accelerator program, or whose background you're really, really interested in? Number two, are there roles that you would be a good fit for? That being said, if you're someone who hasn't done sales positions before, it might be a little bit hard to get a sales job right off the bat. But can you use experiences in executing events on campus, or being a really great operator and executor of things in an internship as a foot in the door to learn more skills and to gain more experiences that will enable you to cultivate some sales skills potentially? And thirdly, what the company actually does. So is it working on a problem that you think is really interesting? Are they a mission-aligned company that is working on a social issue? Think about all these things as you're looking and scoping out startup jobs, because that'll help you have a list of things that you think are really important to you. Luckily, we live in the day of LinkedIn, AngelList, and Crunchbase. So these are really great websites for you to do a pretty broad search for startup opportunities across the country. They have really good filters and search mechanisms, and we think these are really great resources if you're just on the hunt for startup jobs and are just starting out. So one of the things that our team really recommends, because we do work with a lot of fellows in helping them find jobs, is to make a list early on, and it can change as you're talking to companies, as you're reflecting, as you're seeing what you like and what you don't like. Make a list of the must-haves and want-to-haves. Not every job is going to be perfect. Not every opportunity is going to be having the exact things that you want, but we recommend that all of our fellows and all of you make a list of the things that you want to have and that you must have. So wanted to give you all just a few moments to do a quick exercise where you're making a list of 3 must-haves and 3 want-to-haves. Maybe we'll take a minute here. Feel free to continue on after this webinar if you don't complete it. But some tips that we have as you're writing these down are to think about the type of team that you like to work on. What are the values that are really important to you? And here I'm not saying culture, because we think that there's more beyond culture. There are the company values that they really care about that anyone can subscribe to. So thinking also about the roles that you're curious about learning more about. When I was in college, I had no idea what account management really is, but sort of learn about it through resources that VFA provided me and realize that it could be a really good fit for me. So learn as much as you can about the roles. And then finally, again, the kind of company that would be interesting for you to work at. So just take a few more moments if you are writing anything down to just think about what would be really important to you. All right, wrap up any other things that you're jotting down. Again, feel free to return to this. Hopefully it's a helpful exercise that you can return to and edit that list as you're in your search. Want to make sure that, of course, I work for VFA. I'm an alum of VFA, but want to make sure that no matter what happens at the end of this webinar, if you're applying to VFA, that you have the things that you need to find an opportunity that's going to be a really good fit for you, that you're excited about, and one that a company is excited for you about as well. So now that you've scoped some startup jobs, it's time to actually pitch yourself to opportunities. And the first step to pitching yourself to opportunities is to start with yourself. Reflect about where and how you've made an impact. And by that, I mean thinking about the ways that you created value, where you've achieved a lot for an internship, an on-campus job, maybe a student organization. And this is not about your daily responsibilities. It's about the so what of your involvement. So have you been involved in a student organization or returned to an internship where every single year you've made significant contributions that actually make an impact on a problem that the student organization or company is solving? So that's what we mean by reflecting about who you are and the impact that you've made, because that'll be helpful for you when you're pitching yourself and when you're interviewing with companies, for you to articulate your ability to contribute to a startup, how you can actually help them move the needle on whatever problem they're trying to solve, helping them scale, etc. So once you've done some self-reflection, it's time to just learn more about the company. So I say, and I always recommend, to look at LinkedIn, go to events to meet people in the startup community that are around you, or maybe reach out for a virtual conversation on the phone or a video call so that you can really learn more about the company. And the goal for this sort of informational conversation is about learning about the business, the roles that are available, the challenges, the experiences that would set you up well in the interview process, so that you can be effective in the rest of the interview. So always try to get on the phone with someone to learn more about the opportunity and to learn more about how you can align the ways that you've made an impact and your own skills and experiences with their needs. Always be thinking about their needs and not just your skills. And if you're an introvert, and going to events is a little bit challenging, I always recommend bringing a friend or someone who can go with you, just so that maybe there's free food and you can enjoy that, but also so that you can talk to people together and sort of regroup and have a bit of an easier time if going to something on your own isn't exactly your thing. I know that would be challenging sometimes for me as well. So we also recommend writing sort of an easy intro letter to set up an info conversation if you aren't able to get introduced or you haven't met someone in person at an event. Our Everything Startups ebook also has some really great templates that you can use, but essentially just a quick and short email to saying, hey, like, I found out about your company. This is really interesting because of the research that I've done, which tells me this. Maybe like you think that the way that they're solving a problem is really innovative, and say, I'd love to learn more. So I see that you have some roles available. Just love to just learn more about the company and sort of what the roles would be about. And that hopefully will get you in the door. People want to help out and allow you to just learn more about the opportunity that would be available. Then once you know not only about your ability to contribute to a company, how you can make an impact, and how the company might need some extra hands or support, you now can write a really great cover letter to start the interview process. So we always tell people to be really specific in that cover letter by explaining and demonstrating your excitement, curiosity, what you know about the company, because that will show that you've taken the time and effort to learn more about them and be excited about them. And then also being specific about your ability to contribute. While not being overconfident or arrogant, just demonstrate the things that you've done that have a clear impact on the business needs and also the roles and the job description. Talking about, if it's a sales role, talking about how you have increased membership or increased sales for a student organization or company that you've been a part of can be a really good way to show this to companies. So that is how we recommend pitching yourself and to get yourself into the door with an interview. Again, I'm going to do another exercise. So I want to make this as independently interactive as possible. So I would love for you to just take a moment to make a list of 3 organizations very generally where you've made an impact, where you've spent a lot of time adding value, contributing, where your contributions really mattered. And then for just one of them, jot down the impact that you made and how you made it. We'll spend, again, another about a minute doing this. If you're watching later on, feel free to pause here and take the time to do all of that and then resume. But as you're doing this, think about sort of your proudest achievements, the thing that when you leave college, when you leave the job that you're currently at, the thing that you're really excited about sharing with other people. Think about the so what. Why did your work matter there? All right, wrap up whatever you're writing down or typing, and then we'll move on to the next one. Again, feel free to return to this later. You can always edit it, of course, but really good to just note down the things that you've made an impact in so that you can be better at articulating your ability to contribute in other spaces. So now that you've pitched your stuff, it's time to nail the interview process. So the first step in nailing the interview is to remember the things that you learned about the company. Remember you reflected about yourself and how you added value. You've learned as much as you could about the company, what their business needs are, and now it's time to bring it all together. So before you do any interview, it's really important to maybe note down all the things that you reflected about that you learned so that you can be able to be articulate about the ways that you can contribute. So once you've done that, once you know the company really well, know its needs, be focusing on, again, the company's needs and not necessarily your skills. Companies are going to be hiring people based on 2 main reasons. Number one, they have a really explicit urgent need that they need filled, and you are the exact person based on your experiences and skill sets and your achievements to help them make that happen. Or number 2, you're just generally really great, and they would be excited to have you slot into a role that might not be the best fit, but is an opportunity for you to learn and grow and make an impact and grow into other ways. It's much harder if you are not able to articulate the company's needs and how they fit in with your ability to fill them. So always be thinking about the company's needs. At this point, it's not about you. The third thing is that we know that attitude really matters. And one of the things that we encourage all our fellows to do is to come in with an air of honesty and curiosity about a company. You want to be sure that you are demonstrating that you're going to be enthusiastic about doing anything and everything, because startups are going to be constantly changing. They're going to grow and scale. So the thing that you're hired for might not be the thing that you do in 3 months, 6 months, a year. That's because startups change a lot. So they're looking for someone who's going to just take things and run with it, be open to feedback and be open to growing and having that growth mindset, and then having integrity as well. So these are all character traits that are part of the attitude that really matters when you're talking to startups, and are also going to be just really helpful as you are moving through a job at that startup as well. And the last thing is that you should ask questions at the end of the interview that help you understand the company and the role better. What this really means is, this is not the opportunity for you to be asking about salary and compensation, vacation, benefits, but this is a way and an opportunity for you to be really thinking and learning more about the company. Although you might think, oh, I've learned so much about the company already, what else is there for me to know? There's actually a lot more to learn about. You can ask, like, what is the vision for the company in the next few years, the vision for someone in this role? Who is the person that I'd be working with closely? These are all questions that will demonstrate that you're continuously curious about the company and actually want to learn more and add value in that way. So our final exercise is to come up with 3 questions potentially. I know that 3 probably is a lot for a minute, that you'd want to ask the company during an interview. Things that you're really curious about, things that you really wonder about in terms of a company that are maybe part of your must-have and want-to-have list. So again, thinking about sort of what's important to a company to make sure that they know that you really care about supporting the company and moving it forward. All right, wrap up maybe the question or second question, third question that you're working on. And again, feel free to return to this at a later date. But now that we've sort of gone through how to scope startup jobs, pitching yourself, nailing the interview, wanted to open up to Q&A. And again, any questions fair game. If you want to talk even more about the sort of job search, happy to support and answer any questions that I can. Again, I've looked for startup jobs. I've been in a position where I've hired for startup jobs. I've also helped a lot of people get startup jobs, or at least coached them through things to think about. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Also, if you have questions about my experience as a VFA fellow and alum, feel free to ask those questions. And then obviously anything about our application process as well. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen actually. And I think there's at least one question in there. Yeah, and feel free to post any questions. You can also just message them directly to me or unmute yourself. Happy to answer any questions. So with that, we have a question from Drew, and it's, would you be able to share this deck with us, or does the ebook more or less cover it? I would say that the ebook actually covers way more than the tips that I provided. It provides templates, tips, concrete things that you can do. This is sort of a more personalized and virtual session of this. So I'm happy to send the deck out, but I also think that if you want to dive in deeper to another level of it, then the Everything Startups ebook is a great place to start. All right, any other questions? All right, question from Cal. What do startup companies look for in comparison to larger organizations? Yeah, that's a really good question. So what I would say is that smaller startup companies, like I mentioned earlier, are changing all the time, and they pivot and they scale and they grow. So I think one of the things that's really important is what we call adaptive excellence. So people who can adapt to multiple different situations and take on projects or opportunities and responsibilities that might not always be in their job description, because it is something that they need. They're not going to want to hire new people all the time, because hiring people is honestly and unfortunately one of the lowest priorities, and some thing that is an extra and added responsibility for all members of the team. So ideally startups are making really great hires that are really good fit, because they are going to be growing and want to make sure that hire is really good, because there's very few time and financial resources to start that process all over again. So they're looking for people who can adapt to different settings. I would say at larger organizations, they might be looking for people who are a little bit more rigid and specific in their skill set and are looking to fill roles that are quite structured. at startups, it's pretty unstructured. When I, for example, was an account manager at this 13-person startup, they had become more structured, where previously, a year before I joined, the account manager was doing all sorts of things operationally with customers, all the things. And when I joined, it was more structured in terms of me really focusing on growing and improving the customer experience, making sure that they remained paying customers. But also what that meant was it was still a small company, so I was engaged in improving processes and working on things, also like hiring for a team as well. So they're looking for people who can really pitch in all sorts of ways. So hopefully that answers the question. Again, feel free to send in questions in a direct message to me as well. Happy to answer any variety of questions as it relates to startups and entrepreneurship and VFA. All right, we have a question from Neil. What are some of the key questions you like asking potential companies? Yeah, one of my favorite questions are, what are the challenges that you're currently dealing with these days? I think that helps open the door for a lot of insights about what the company is working on and where an individual could really add value. A startup's always going to be strapped. There's always going to be so many things to do. But if you can get a sense of what a company is working on, what they're grappling with, then that's a really good way to like learn more about those things. A sort of corollary to that question is, if you had more time, like what would you work on? That'll give you a sense of the things that a CEO or whoever the hiring manager is thinks is high importance, but not super urgent. A thing that they want to do in the time that they might have if they had more hands on deck, but might not be able to do. And then another question I like asking is, what is something that, like, if I took this position, would free you up to do? And that'll give you a sense of the priorities of that the company, and also the thing that the person who might manage you likes doing and wants to continue to do and grow in. So those are some of the questions that I like asking. And also just like, what is your vision for the company in 5 years? Basically things that you can't really learn just by looking at a person's website or the opportunities that are available online. So, hopefully you've done a lot of research on the founder and the team. So I always try to ask questions that I can't really like Google, if that makes sense. Great. Well, with that, if there are no more questions, I'm going to share my screen very quickly again. Hopefully you got what you wanted out of this webinar, and if you didn't, I'm going to be sending out a survey. So if you have more questions or feedback, honestly, if you're like, this actually wasn't that helpful, I need to know, and I would love to know, so that I can make this better for future people who join similar sessions, or if we're doing this in person somewhere. So feel sure to let me know. Please stay in touch. My email address is winson@ventureforamerica.org. So pretty easy, just my first name and vfa.org. Happy to be in touch if you have any questions. Want to make sure that you feel supported in the startup job search, and or if you're applying to VFA as well. And just so that you're all aware, our first deadline of the year is August 27th at midnight. So encourage you to all apply by that time and date. All right. Thank you all so much for joining. I hope you all have a great rest of your days or evenings. Take care, everyone.